welcome to the Nothing But Dicta podcast, where nothing is binding and we like it that way. I'm your host, Eric Levine, and today we're talking the Civil Procedure Midterm. I'm joined by three illustrious 3Ls today, whose resumes are all far too long to list all their accolades, so I'll just say they all took and survived the 1L midterm. So the first one I'm joined by is Zina Barghash.
Hi, everyone.
Elie Kommel.
Oh.
And Libby Rooney.
Hi, guys.
So first question I have for you guys is if you could sort of tell us a bit about your civil procedure midterm experience. Did anything in the midterm surprise you? And how did you sort of feel going in and out of that experience?
I felt pretty good about the Civ Pro midterm. My Civ Pro professor was very clear about what would be on the exam. And he would reiterate to us in class, it's only 15% of our grade. It's really not a huge deal. It's just trying to get us to know how to study for an exam and how to be comfortable taking an exam.
Elie, did you have a similar experience? Do you have a different experience?
I was surprised by how quickly it flew by. I was expecting it to drag on and be this brutal experience. And you kind of, once the timer starts, you just go into it and the time flies by. So yeah, I would say I was pretty nervous going into it, pretty relieved coming out of it, until I remembered that I'd forgotten an entire section, the personal jurisdiction analysis. In the moment I thought my law career was over. Obviously that's a slight exaggeration, but that was not my best moment.
Now I'm going to move it over to Libby to see if you had anything else that hasn't been covered with sort of your experience with the midterm.
Yeah, I think I do actually have a different experience. My professor was great, and I felt very prepared for the exam. Thought I did great, and actually did not do so well. I knew everything backwards and forwards, and I just kind of word vomited it onto the page instead of actually reading the fact pattern and tailoring my answers to the facts that were presented.
So what sort of strategies did you use when prepping for the midterm? And could you share some of the ones that particularly were helpful, and then also ones, if you had any, that were not helpful?
So I outlined as far as we had gotten in the class so far, and my professor was similarly very clear on what material would be on the midterm and when we got past material that would be tested. And I also had the E&E book, or if I didn't have it, I had one of my friends had it. And so we ran through the questions, the E&E, it's explanations and examples book, if I remember correctly. Very helpful. They have short, tailored kind of hypothetical questions at the end of each chapter.
Yeah, so similarly, I would say I did my outlining on my own. That's probably the most important component. Just work through the issues on your own. Make sure you really understand what's going on. But after having the outline, I would say the most useful thing for me was taking as many practice exams as I could. And then the way I did it is I would take my exams and then I'd call up a couple of my friends, my classmates, and we would walk through the answers, see where we disagreed, where we agreed, where we had questions.
I really benefited from taking practice tests and then sharing them with Zina. Actually, we swapped tests. And one of the things that I really appreciate about that was just seeing how she structured her answers and comparing it to mine to sort of get that feedback. That practice was really important. Zina, yeah. other than trading practice exams with me, did you do anything to prep?
One thing I did do is at the beginning of the semester, in preparation for the midterm, I did a little study session where myself, Eric, and our other classmate, we kind of outlined the class together. I also did the practice exams and I did the E&E questions at the end of the chapters. But yeah, outlining practice exams, studying with other people, I think those are the big three things that are traditionally a part of the exam studying experience. And also I would study and then I would take a break because I think when you're studying for an exam, it's very easy to get worked up and to overthink things. But if you kind of let things simmer in your brain and really wrap your head around it and then kind of come back to studying, I think that it will definitely show on the test.
does anyone have, anything that they did that they don't recommend because it didn't work out the way they would have liked?
I restructured my outline to be a lot more user-friendly. I made a big point of going back and sort of looking over my outline and being aware of where the pages end, where the sections should end logically, and just structuring it so that I'd know I wouldn't miss anything important next time. So that, I would say, was my number one takeaway, was make sure your outline is going to help you. It's structured in a way that's going to help you at the time when you're flying through the exam. Other than that, I would say the exam really confirmed the usefulness of taking as many practice exams as you can. We talked about that a little bit before. But you develop sort of a habit of understanding the structures of these exams and the structures of answering a question. So you're not kind of getting lost in your own thoughts. You're really focused on what's being asked and what are all the components of that answer. And I learned that the grade on the midterm really doesn't matter because you can do much better on the final and no one will ever know, So I didn't do great on the midterm, but in the end I got, the grade I wanted in the class and everybody was happy. At least I was happy.
I did a couple things after I got that disappointing grade back. I made an appointment to meet with my professor to talk about the test and to talk about what I did wrong, where I left points on the table, and just in general kind of almost like just make me feel better about this. Like, this isn't the end all be all. And it wasn't, obviously. Like, it definitely, you can get a bad grade and still do very, very well in the class. It's not going to hinder you at all. And I actually set up a Google Doc with a few other students, and we would kind of coordinate on what practice exams we were going to be taking or what questions we were going to be taking, and then put our answers in that Google Doc. So at your leisure, you could read other people's answers. You really want to engage with the facts and argue both sides and take each perspective, and then in putting yourself in each side's perspective and what they would argue, the different facts really come to light.
What's like the top thing you would tell to a 1L who asks you for advice on the midterm?
I would say to do what works for you, whether that's outlining or making flashcards or group study or solo study. This is the time where you can kind of experiment to see whether or not your study habits really do work.
Learn to find this enjoyable, because you'll have these tests a lot in law school.
All right, and that's all we've got for today's episode of Nothing But Dicta. Thanks once again to my guests, Zina, Elie, and Libby, and we'll see you next time.